Mike, ready?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to another night of finance and investments in Ukraine. My name is Mike Wilson. I'm the CEO and the co-founder of Andesite Blue. We're also brought to you here by Taloka Studio. Well, this evening I'm excited. I have a good friend here with me. We've just actually met over the past couple months, and we've had so much in common and just that camaraderie that we became really good friends from that point on. We were introduced by a mutual friend, Oleg Gusev, and we're just thankful for that opportunity. But he's here tonight with me this evening, and we have some really good material to go over and a really good conversation, so I am excited about this evening. So again, thank you for joining us, and without any further ado, I would like to introduce you to Leon Beker. So Leon, thank you for joining us this evening and coming.
Thank you so much, Michael, for inviting me.
I know it was last minute. I told you, I think, Thursday or Friday?
That's how you told me, very last minute.
So, but it's just really nice that you have the flexibility to be able to join me this evening and have this conversation.
Oh, certainly.
So, before we get started, though, tell us a little bit about your background, your chain of history of your life, where you were born, where you've lived, where you got your education. Just give us a little bit of bio and stuff.
Yeah. So, I was born in Tashkent, Uzbekistan.
Okay.
And because of that, I'm a native speaker of Russian Ukrainian.
Okay. Oh, very good.
We've immigrated from Uzbekistan to the United States in 1989. I was 10, 11 years old. My sister was 4. So we were raised in New York and Brooklyn. I went to junior high school there, high school in Brooklyn, applied to college, worked on Wall Street. And then when I was about 19 years old, during my freshman year in college, I got a job offer to go work for a company out of London, where I subsequently accepted the offer and moved on to London, continued my studies there, but ended up working for the same company, but in Geneva, in Switzerland. And that's where I finished my bachelor's degree, in Geneva, Switzerland.
Okay.
Lived there for 4 or 5 years, and that kind of started my European tour, as I would like to refer back to it, where I worked mostly in European companies throughout Europe. Besides living in Geneva, I've also lived in London. I lived a little bit in Monaco, a little bit in Paris, and everywhere I worked either as in corporate finance for medium to large size companies, or I worked for consultants, doing consulting projects and strategies, streamlining operations, reworking corporate finance and accounting departments, things like that. After about that time, I decided to return to the United States, to New York, to Brooklyn, where I got involved on Wall Street in proprietary trading. And I don't know if are you familiar with prop trading?
Not in that term, not in that phrase. So proprietary usually means
for the bank's money.
Okay.
So that's those traders are employed by the bank. I worked in Morgan Stanley, Salomon Smith Barney. Then I set up my own outfit, my own desk, got a prime brokerage account going with one of the brokers. And we had an office on 70 Rector Street, like 30 floors up, overlooking New York Stock Exchange. And we just basically traded equities and indexes and ETFs in those days. And that was a very interesting career. Because of that, I got to, to trade securities, you have to be Series 7, Series 55, 20, 63, and to manage a group of traders, you need a Series 24 Principals license, which I've had, and managed my own type of a small brokerage company, I want to say, a trading brokerage company with about 40 people trading for the firm. After that, I've taken this company in 2005, 2004 to Moscow, where I moved and spent about 2 years in Moscow working out of there and doing pretty much the same thing, trading. Following that time, I've sold the company there to a bank, to a local bank, and I've gotten recruited into Ukraine by like a headhunting firm.
Sure.
That recruits top management and executives to larger companies usually, and that's how I got to Ukraine. I went to Donetsk, and I worked for a really large company out of Donetsk called System Capital Management.
Okay.
I spent a long time with them, over 10 years, spending maybe 5 years in real estate development and 5, 6 years in transport. And in transport, I've done strategic consolidations of large, previously unconsolidated transport operations of some of the companies that belong to the firm,
Okay.
to System Capital
Right, yeah.
Management. That allowed me to really understand the transport infrastructure in Ukraine and really become a thought leader on transport corridors, on legislative initiatives that need to be done,
Correct.
on pricing among our 5 neighbor countries that surround us, and the transshipments that go through our country to get to
To the
somewhere
south.
to get to somewhere else. So, like if a German company is sending stuff to Turkey, they could go via Ukraine through our ports and in Turkey,
Correct, yeah.
or they could go through Romania, or they can go through some other countries that are our neighbors. And we were losing that battle.
Right.
The transshipment goods would continuously go down in volume, and we would do less of them. And some of the factors to blame is corruption, bureaucracy, not transparent process at all of what happens once the container comes into Ukraine, digital initiatives that were non-existent and unheard of.
Right.
Europe, it's all bill of lading. All those
Yes,
documents are
yeah.
digitally done, and there's no really paper trail. While as soon
And
as
it's easy to track, it's easy to monitor,
Of course, of course.
timing, everything.
Of course. And the worst thing you want to do for a shipper or a broker to lose control or to lose visibility of
Exactly.
where it is.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's exactly what happened. And so I've transitioned to work on the government side first as an advisor, and then more and more in the actual ministries, where I would work with ministers and government officials in really putting together not only the strategy but the action plan to support a change of strategy in making our country, in making our corridors more attractive to
Yeah,
our
absolutely,
partners.
absolutely. I mean, we have a lot of roadway that can be utilized, from Lithuania all the way down to the Black Sea. So from the Baltic to the Black Sea, there's a lot of corridor there, and there's a lot of revenue that the countries.
He's not getting.
Right. And
On top of, there's other initiatives, I'm sorry to overstep
no
that,
problem.
like inland waterways. That's a huge way to bring goods throughout the country through Dnipro River and the other river that we
Yes,
have
yeah.
there. But it's being utilized at 10% capacity right now because of some legislative roadblocks and some physical infrastructure projects that need to be done in order to clean that waterway. And so I've also put some of my time and effort on that. I worked with the U.S. Treasury advisors on those projects, with the IM, International Monetary Fund, with the World Bank, where I spearheaded studies and the port tariffs reviews. So basically what the government ports are charging private companies operating at the ports, and whether we should decrease those tariffs instead of every year trying to increase them, killing our competitive position with our neighbors. And until you show that in perspective and create and do a real deep analysis of those flows and where the bottlenecks are, you don't really see the picture. But once you see the picture, what the Romanian ports charge, what do they charge for this, what do they charge for that, and then compare it to ours, you'll see that we're charging more. Plus, we're not transparent. Plus, they get
correct.
So there's all these challenges that come into hand, and I want to say, broken my. I've really overcame a lot of obstacles in trying to push those reforms.
It is important. Ukraine is looking into entering into the EU. We've already been accepted. The application has been accepted, so we're into the session of the EU. But we have 7 requirements to fulfill in order to be able to be looked at, and until those are completed, we don't have a chance to make it into the EU. Many of the things that you just spoke about is part of that cleanup, because we have to be, not just modernization. That's one of the things, because we have to have the EU standards of living here. So the modernization is critical for civilization, society, but also the modernization of transportation, transports, ports, and all of that. And it needs to be inclusive into one type of system that matches the other countries who have ports that are in the EU currently. And you know, one of the things, you know, I don't know whether you're Democrat or Republican. It's really irrelevant. But when you look at it in the U.S., the Democrats always raise taxes. Republicans always lower taxes. And what is lost in the economy is that when taxes are lowered, it actually brings in more revenue to the government.
Of course.
Because it stimulates commerce, it stimulates business.
Right.
It incentivizes new businesses to start up because you're not taxing them to death. I got taxed to death in California. I closed my business. I had a business and it's like, oh my God, when they started putting regulators on there and when I had to start having insurance for every little, you know, if a fly flew into the building, you know, I had to insure that, you know, it was so overly regulated and so overly taxed that you had no opportunity. And that's why so many companies moved out of California, went into Texas, went into Alabama, going into Florida.
100%. Very well familiar with that. And that's the same situation that's kind of in Ukraine right now.
Right.
And as part of the group of original people who created the Reform Support Council here, an open government supported by George Soros' foundation, that allowed us and some of my colleagues to lobby on behalf of young people working here and building their future here to put in reforms that are necessary in order for us to move forward as a country here.
And I'm thankful for a lot of the new politicians that are coming up right now, the deputies that are in. I know a few of them, and they're doing a fantastic job, especially on the transparency side and anti-corruption processes and programs that they're setting in. They've actually got their education outside of, you know, when it comes to politics and business and commerce, outside of Ukraine to further expand themselves to be able to understand the politics here and what it's going to take to push the corruption out. And there's several countries that have been the example that corruption was pushed out when you really put up a society of businessmen and businesswomen, local businessmen and businesswomen, that really didn't give any room for the corrupt to continue to steal, like the mafia. You know, they couldn't just come in there and just take, give me, you know, the portion of your goods, or give me a portion of your gains, just so you're protected. You know, that type of mentality.
Racket. That's a racket.
You're racket, yeah, racketeering, and so those got pushed out, and those countries are flourishing, but they had to go through the same thing that Ukraine is experiencing and going through right now. Ukraine is an emerging market where obviously the market is oppressed because of the war, but it's still a very wonderful opportunity in business and investment.
100%.
I personally am excited because I've lived here the whole time. I didn't go anywhere, and I've always supported Ukraine through whether it was military defense, I trained the military, or just, you know, business and volunteer work. You know, but I have a passion, you know, for Ukraine. But seeing what we're going through and being here in the middle of it, you just can't help but notice the opportunities that are ahead for the local and the citizens of Ukraine. And they don't quite feel this as, oh, when is it going to happen? You know, there always are words of, oh, when is that going to happen? You know, you're so optimistic. And I says, well, history has kind of already proven that this is what's going to happen. And we can look at Europe alone after World War II. We can see the developing countries at that point. They were all emerging markets. They were all destroyed and leveled. And you know, look at the beauty now. Look at Poland. I mean, you can just cross the border and look at Poland. And Poland had to deal with corruption too. But when they did, and they started building into their infrastructure and into their highway program, and they started really investing towards the people. You look at the streets of the cities, and they're beautiful bike lanes, beautiful walk lanes, beautiful roads. You know, I mean, they've put money into the people, into the infrastructure, and you feel more relaxed there. And this is I see this going to be in Ukraine as well, because Ukraine is striving. The youth and the young politicians are striving to obtain this and to move there.
I mean, I definitely see that around the country. So, you know, if you're walking around the center, the parks look great. Like
Yes.
they've updated the parks, so that's finally coming here. And I've been here for 15 years. I'm so happy to see that. I'm so happy to finally see that politicians are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Correct.
Not all of them, not all the time.
Right.
But at least there's a path. At least there's a way. And I'm really happy with the support that the American intergovernment and government institutions have done here in terms of working with creating the anti-corruption bureau, creating the specialized court prosecution agency. and really took an active interest in helping this country to rid itself of the endemic corruption that exists here. It existed always, and unfortunately, still even now we hear this, we hear these scandals.
And and it comes down to the rule of law. Without any governing of law and enforcement of law, there's no way that a corrupt society will disappear.
No,
But it's the enforcement of the rule of law. You can have Ukraine has a great constitution, and my daughter's mother is a constitutional lawyer, and so she has to go through everything, and match it to the Constitution. And Ukraine has a great constitution, but it's the enforcement of law that lacks, and that doesn't give the people and society that confidence. But it is changing. Some people like to see it at a faster pace, but you can see it over the 15 years. I can see it. I've lived here permanently for 4 years, but I was also back here in 2012 and 2015 and so on, and there's a big change, from that. And which is inspiring, and then that kind of really, knowing, that aura, that stigma of, Ukraine is a corrupt nation, it makes it hard for outside investors to think, well, why would I invest, if this is still going on? It's the opportunities are there,
Yeah, look,
and it's really being wise in the connections where you're investing in. If you're just a off-cuff, real estate investor is going to say, "Oh, I'm going to try to take up some property," stuff like that, you'll get eaten alive.
not for a fact. I did do a huge real estate business here. I've, I do have realized and completed development projects in Ukraine and Kyiv and in Donetsk as well. Some in Dnipropetrovsk, where I actually came up with the idea of building a business center, secured the rights to a land plot, bought it out, changed the zones, initiated a new architectural project for a building, for an office building to be built 16, 20 stories high. Got that project approved, secured the financing for it, and through equity and also through cash. Gotten investors involved and secured those rights for them. The rights and the legal protections that exist here for private investors, they're here, and they're very good.
Exactly.
They're very good.
And that you had all the right resources to also be able to go that direction. You had a working knowledge. You also had an interior knowledge, being as Uzbekistan and stuff, that you have an interior knowledge of the working language and the people to work with.
No, that's assigning something to me that I don't think that's correct. Because first of all, I grew up in America.
Right.
So when I came there, I was 10 years old. It's not like I've had that knowledge.
Well, right.
You know what I mean? So no, I had to learn the way you bring an architectural project to the city. How do you go through the approval process through the architectural council in the city to get approved? How do you go through a session of the city's parliamentary system for them to vote for rezoning on the land plot? And I think those aspects in every country are going to be the same. You have to talk to people. You have to make a project open. You have to explain to them what benefit it will bring, what benefit them voting for that would bring.
Correct. Okay.
And there's also one of the things here is that we have to hold public hearings so that neighbors have to approve, which is very tough to do. But we were able to do that successfully, and we were able to overcome concerns, challenges, obstacles. But it's a normal process for a construction project to be brought up, a big building in the middle of the city. Those are normal things. And I've never had a case where I couldn't get something done, or there was such big opposition to it. Well, I had cases where we had big opposition and we had to back off a little bit when really the neighborhood said, we don't want another business center here. And then, we sat down with our owners and with the owner of the project, and we came up with a different concept use for the project, and that was approved by everyone.
So you were flexible enough to be able to create and be creative and
different concept, right? Right. To include more social, to include more for everyone, bigger playground, bigger this. So there are ways to do that. But every developer goes through that. So every developer has that social part onto the project.
Correct. Yeah, and I was more or less talking about the average Joe Blow.
The average Joe Blow. I would consider, I own few apartments in the city, and I don't see a way for, owning an apartment is pretty easy. Owning
Right.
an apartment,
Ukraine has made it easy for
easy.
foreigners to be able
For
to do
foreigners
that.
to do it. It's
Mhm.
easy to rent it. It's yes, the lease agreements here are not as strong and ironclad as they are in the West. However, if it's a commercial property, then those agreements and those protections are a lot better
Okay.
than if you're renting to a person. let's say.
Residential's and-
Yeah.
yeah.
So basically, if a person signs with you a lease for a year, the risk is that he'll change his mind in 3 months and says, "I'm sorry, I'm leaving, and that's it, I'm left," and then suing him for the remainder
Right,
of the
the
land
lease, yeah.
and stuff like that's a little bit challenging. However, if it's a company that does that and you have a lease agreement, commercial lease agreement at the business center with them for a year, yes, you can go after them. You will get the money. They will try to defend themselves and say like, look, they'll come up with excuses
Right, right.
why they had to leave, but that's a process, and it's a process everywhere. It's the same. So I definitely believe that in the Ukrainian law and private law, all Ukrainians believe in it. They all believe that's the whole idea of the country.
Right,
Want it to be
mhm.
democratic as opposed to Russia.
Correct.
They all believe in it. There is no lawlessness here like it is in Russia, where a policeman can come and take your property, take your apartment from you. There is nothing like that here that I ever heard. Yes, there are scamming ways of transferring from older people, getting them to sign something blindsidedly, defrauding them and misrepresenting items. Yes, but I've never seen it on a personal level. I've read about it in the newspapers.
Right.
So on the level where I operate, we contract out to. I own a consulting company here in Ukraine, Beker Consulting. We consult all kinds of investors, all kinds of groups, DFIs, NGOs that are coming here, that want to do business
Okay.
here. We do walk investors through the protections that are available. And two of my partners, so there's 3 partners to my firm, 2 of them are lawyers. One of them is Alexander Frischberg.
Okay.
Are you going to his barbecue tomorrow or no?
Oh, that's tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
Unfortunately, I am not able to. I
right.
wanted to, but
Happy 4th of July.
yes.
Forgot to mention that.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, tomorrow I'm going to Alexis Frischberg's barbecue bash. A bunch of other Americans
Yeah,
are
you can tell
coming.
me the time on that one. I'll try to squeeze something in there, but my plate's pretty full. But it would be nice to stop in.
Yeah, I mean for sure. But he's been here since '91 for 30 years already, and he's been working with embassies, private companies, private individuals, institutions, and bringing them here and protecting them here. And he had nothing. He has this very successful
And
practice.
this is which was excellent to hear because this is the questions that always pop up when people look and says, "Oh no, I'm gonna get ripped off. Oh no, all of this negative, coming back there." But to hear a side that's you just don't hear it on a daily basis. You definitely don't hear it in the news, because the news only gets their money on fear and and
News is
Yeah.
a different thing. From my experience, I've only seen positive things here in Ukraine. I did lose money on businesses. Don't get me wrong, and my partners did try to screw me on on some stuff. But also, you have to be diligent. Nobody took that away from anyone. You have to know what you're doing. You have to employ the right people and
Exactly,
and work with the
exactly.
right lawyers to protect your interest and ownership rights.
That's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And that is key, and that's important. That's why I say the average Joe coming in here without those safeguards on there, I mean, he's really taking his investment into his own hands. And so his risks are a little bit higher. But, again, even with Andesite Blue, that's what we focus on and what we do, as raising our selling bonds in the UK. And moving those funds here and investing those funds here back into bonds with hard assets into capital investments here in Ukraine. As a consulting firm in your end, that's something we would look to partner and to work with you on that with Andesite Blue because we have a fantastic team right now, but to have the strength in numbers and the strength of wisdom, the strength of knowledge and the strength of experience is irreplaceable.
Yeah.
And those things are critical to help our investors, especially bond buyers who want to know that they're going to get a guaranteed return that's going to be there on the maturity.
Yeah.
And those are important.
I mean, look, from the finance profession myself and investments, there are 2 guaranteed things in life. Let me remind you
Yes.
what they are.
Death and taxes.
Death and taxes. And those are the 2 guaranteed things
Yes,
that we
exactly.
can
That's
expect
exactly right.
to do. You could minimize risk, I would say.
Yes.
You could minimize risk. You could increase your chances of success. You do have to know what you're doing, or you do have to know with the people who do know what they're doing
Mhm.
and have been exposed to situations like that and have gotten themselves out.
Correct.
But again, Ukraine is a big country with a lot of opportunities. I feel
Yes, it
that
is. Yep.
the only time you will get an opportunity is in a time of crisis. And that is why I think right now presents the most significant opportunity over a lifetime. I think Ukraine will be one of those countries in the European Union that we built from scratch.
Correct. Correct.
The amount of money that's going to be coming here would definitely make Ukraine, at least for the next few years, the number one place to be because of the growth that will
Yep. The
provide.
growth. Yeah.
There are some challenges and there are some concerns that also come to mind. The fact that 12 million people left the country,
Mhm.
whether they'll come back or not, and whether the government is doing everything in their hands to
To incentivize people to come
incentivize
back,
people
yeah.
to come back.
Yeah.
And that's just a matter of the policy that the government is putting forth or tasking someone to put forward. Um,
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that, and seeing kind of seeing the crystal ball, of the future of Ukraine is pretty exciting. On that growth aspect, the tourism, a lot of countries survive only on tourism. They have other means, but their main number one institution of income is tourism, like Hawaii, for example. I mean, the billions of dollars that come in every year is dependent upon tourism. And Ukraine has had tourism. They always had tourism because it's a beautiful country. People love visiting and coming here. And we had just tons of foreigners just walking on the streets all over prior to COVID. COVID hit, and then that started coming back again. Though about the second year, it started coming back. And of course, then we had February 24th, and that changed everything. And all the foreigners left. Well, not all of them, but I mean a good, the majority. The majority.
Everyone left there.
And but. Ukraine is now on the map like it's never been before.
Like it's now been
It's-
exactly the opposite of what Mr. Putin would like.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was.
Demilitarized and forsaken by the world.
Yeah, and exactly. Yeah, no, exactly. And so he blew his wad and has nothing left. He's destroyed his own country, his own economics, and Ukraine is the one that's going to be the sweetheart. It's the golden child. It's the breadbasket of Europe. It was always considered that, but now it's the breadbasket of the world. The world has actually felt the effects of the lack of grain coming out from Ukraine, and so a lot of countries throughout the world have suffered from the lack of food sources that Ukraine provided. And but the tourism is going to be through the roof over the next few years.
Agree.
There's going to be new businesses popping up. There's going to be new tourist agencies popping up just to be able to handle the influx. And it's this season. I mean, that'll taper off, and it'll have its moment. But the investment parts of the growth, rebuilding Mariupol. I think Mariupol is going to be the sweetheart of Ukraine. It's going to be one of the most beautiful port cities. Odessa's nice. I've been there. I like Odessa, but I really do believe. I mean, that Mariupol is going to be the real attractive place, and the port city, and a lot of opportunity there. We mourn for the losses. It really breaks our heart, and it is sad. And we mourn for our heroes, that have sacrificed their lives to be able to keep us safe. I mean, we're in Kiev, and we are relatively safe. We do get some, the missile strikes periodically. May was a huge attack on us, but our air defense systems are doing a fantastic job on that, and but when this is over, and there's projections on that, I have my own personal projections, and I've kind of aired them here, even on the show. I've kind of given my opinions and what I feel and think is going to be the end of this. From what my ear to the railroad tracks, kind of hearing some things come down that it might be even a little bit sooner than my projection, which I won't complain. But I'm excited about that. I know all of Ukraine is excited about that moment. Everybody keeps asking. You and I are, even though we live here, residents here, we're still outsiders in a sense, and so we see things with a different lens. And that financially. We see things in a different lens with your background, with your experience, education, and all that put together. I mean, it puts me in awe too to look at your CV, and very impressive. But it's something that you personally took to heart, and it's something that you desired, and something that you wanted to develop. You don't do it for your own personal financial gains. You do it actually for the whole, for many, for people to benefit from, and that's what brings you satisfaction in life, to know that other people have benefited from, your experiences and direction. But mine's a little bit different. I'm a developer, I'm a builder and a developer, and gotten into the financial aspects of it later in life, so I'm on that learning curve. And so I just hire people around me that are geniuses, that have that skills and that skill sets and that experience. But what I see as a military man coming down the pipeline is encouraging, and to see the end of this coming to a head, this war is going to end, and Ukraine is going to experience a huge boom, and a big portion of the capital, which is any money from outside of its own country, is huge for economics and economic growth. And that tourism is going to be the stimulus that gets quickly to the citizens. The investment parts of it, which will be the developments and things, that builds it in time, and brings in more taxes, and so that the more infrastructure is going to be invested into, and we build that. That's going to take 3 to 5 and 10 years. 3, 5, and 10 years is going to be the proportions on that. But tourism is a now thing. Restaurants experience tourism now. Tourist guides now, hotels now,
Yes.
the Airbnbs now, all of that
Certainly.
stuff and that's the exciting part. The way that citizens can not only experience the growth over time, but they get the now experience, of economic growth.
No, I agree with you 100%. Tourism is at the forefront. And tourism has always been certainly quite large here, and the government has certainly tried to make it a lot more attractive for participants in the industry. I'm not that familiar with the tourism industry or the hospitality industry in that respect. More from an investment and M&A
Correct.
M&A background. I see opportunities in the capital markets. I see opportunities in the real estate. I see opportunities in defense tech, military tech. Right now, I mean, Ukraine right now is the laboratory that allows companies from all over the world to test their equipment, and they're certainly taking advantages of that.
There was a lot learned during this process as well. For
Still
defense.
going on.
Yeah, and which has been very encouraging, and exciting, and the Western worlds have been watching this and taking notes, So I'm not sure if it's something you wanted to talk about, but you have a project that you're looking to develop in part of your consulting, but it's more of a broad spectrum, like in the demining and to the the military aspect and
Yes.
financial.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
So recently, with the turn of events and with the war, we decided to launch a separate section or department within our consulting firm that is related to defense and security, military, defense, military. We are working with really talented senior partners who are spearheading that effort. The gentleman I've met here from the British Army and the American Army that came here and fought very bravely here for the past year with the Foreign Legion. Few of them are now working with us in that capacity to provide really interesting capabilities and really interesting opportunities for defense companies
Yes.
to come here and to mainly test their equipment. And it's software, it's hardware, it's electronic warfare, it's jamming, anti-jamming, it's all kinds of interesting equipment that right now is being exposed on the front lines. And I just recently came also from the Ukrainian Recovery Conference in London.
Okay.
In London, where I've attended a lot of those conferences in London in the 3-4 days that they've had it a week
Yes.
ago. And the defense, the ones on defense were very interested, filled with many companies that want to come here and test equipment, that want to come here and see whether they're making something that works or it doesn't.
Actually, yeah, exactly.
The other thing that's been going on is that, here we can see some of the pictures from that event. That is one of the panels or discussion panels.
Yeah. And I remember you telling me about that when you were there and
Yeah,
stuff, so
it was
that
really
was exciting, yeah.
Really exciting.
I wish I could have joined you. I know that you kind of gave me the invite, but I couldn't make it out there, so.
I mean, it was a tough, oh, I'll tell you, if you're interested in figuring things out, Palantir, you see is here, they're being tested right now.
Okay,
Some of the companies that are there, that are joining. One of the other things that really struck me in that conference was that usually when donors and companies say that they'll support the country at war
Mhm.
with investments
Right.
and with direct foreign aid, they usually talk about doing that after the war. And what really surprised me during the conference is that everyone was going to do it
yeah,
now.
now, this is the best litmus test.
Yeah, that's
You
the
know.
best litmus test. And if the DFIs and the governments and the donors and the private companies are coming here and making the investments right now, that's a huge encouraging sign
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
general conflict and everybody else.
And it's exciting for me. Like I said, I'm a military man, a U.S. Marine, and so I understand order. I understand, coordination. I understand logistics. I understand, the importance of communications and
Of course.
everything. All goes into it to be successful in your, in your tasks. And being here in Ukraine and training in it, we see the holes, we see the weaknesses like that. So it's absolutely exciting to see these companies wanting to come in because it's unfortunate it's a live battlefield or a live testing ground, but it's still an opportunity to come in there. And it's the support that Ukraine has needed that has turned the tide and really is pushing the
of
borders
course.
and getting Russia out of Ukraine.
Of course.
It's been absolutely fantastic, and I'm really thankful for these companies. I'm thankful for these countries that have, jumped in and given the support, and working on that.
That program is actually twofold. So on one side, you're testing equipment
Mhm.
with the MOD or the GRU,
Mhm.
military intelligence. And the second thing there is that if they like your product, they can procure it for themselves.
Right. Yeah.
And then they have large military programs that are available to them for equipment that works on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Because if Ukrainians are getting it, now all the countries are watching. They
Oh,
wanna
they're
get
gonna,
it
yeah,
too.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that means it's working. We already been privy to some of the tests from
Mhm.
other companies, and I can tell you offside that, without mentioning any names, that some of the large equipment, defense equipment manufacturers that sell equipment that cost tens of millions of dollars,
Right.
and the
Mhm.
millions of dollars, cannot penetrate the electronic warfare defenses that Russia sets up,
Mhm. Right.
and just falls out at the ground, and you lose that equipment, and they get it. Like,
Right.
if it
Right.
falls
Yeah.
on
They
their-
knock it out of the ground. Yeah.
They get it.
Exactly. And they can reverse engineer.
reverse engineer it,
Yeah.
and they're doing that.
Yeah.
So that game is being played on both sides. We're looking at their stuff, they're looking at ours. We're
Mhm.
inventing something, they're breaking it apart and integrating them tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that cat and mouse game has been instrumental in providing real live war feedback to companies
Correct.
designing the tech.
Correct.
And let me tell you, Ukrainian engineers, Ukrainian entrepreneurs on the battlefield doing EW, electronic warfare, are able to successfully penetrate some of the
That's fantastic.
advanced capabilities that
Mhm.
I've seen our enemy put out. And the Western companies, and they're taking notice of that.
Mhm.
And that equipment is not expensive. And
Yeah.
so there's
exactly.
there's a lot of room there for innovation, for sure, for that innovation.
That's exciting. I've been speaking a couple times with an entrepreneur group, so Ukrainian entrepreneurs, and and they're asking, well, what kind of ideas during the time of war, during the time of this, oppressive market and everything, what can we do? They're thinking to go international, which is one object, one objective to be able to take on some international business and expand yourself. And a lot of these people are IT, but you're already bringing up just a very important information that opens the doors that you can also, there's a lot internally. And the IT sector in Ukraine is very impressive.
Huge, 200,000 people.
Yeah, it's very, very impressive. is actually competing with India, not so much as in numbers, but as in technology and intelligence and development. Yeah. So the world has taken a good look at that, has been for the past 5 years with how the growth of IT in Ukraine. Very smart young kids coming up.
And that's very exciting.
It is.
Yeah, that's very exciting. I mean, look where Israel is in terms of tech innovation,
Mm-hmm.
and they're living in the live battlefield
All the time, all the time. Yeah, that is, I even think about that. People from here have gone to Israel and visited, and even some of them went there as refugees to Israel, from Ukraine, and yeah, they are constantly under attack. But their enemies are all around them, just constantly, and Israel's having to always be the tip of the spear. They're always having to be ahead of their enemy.
Well, thanks to Trump,
Mhm.
where he was the head of the administration, and his efforts to unite
Yes,
Saudi Arabia and this Jewish state
yes,
has been tremendously successful.
Yeah.
And that cooperation and partnership is alive and kicking. And
and that's fantastic.
thank,
That's good.
thank God to that, there's few less enemies that Israel has
Yes,
around them.
yeah, yeah. Well, and his dedication to Israel and even moving the embassy and everything,
Tremendous.
he proved his,
Tremendous.
faithfulness to one of our strongest allies.
Yeah,
which
I am
is Israel.
Republican, by the way.
Okay, all right, well, that makes sense. I know our conversations have been leaning towards that. I just don't assume it, but I know that you and I think the same. That's kind of the bonding that we've had, is that
100%.
we're on the same level against all of the stuff that's going on in the U.S., which is a battle in itself. Well, anyway, thank you, Leon. I really appreciate this conversation. I know there's just so much to talk about.
No,
And but it is exciting. That's the whole thing. Is just the enthusiasm, and there's a buzz going outside of the borders of Ukraine. There's people waiting for an opportunity to invest, but I've heard it from you, I've heard it from Brad, I've heard it from so many people, I've heard it from myself, that now is an opportunity to be and to get your money set into Ukraine, because there's already developments going on right now. There's already investments going into technology right now. There's a lot that's happening, and waiting is like, oh dang, I should have done it then, and you just it's just really a good opportunity to get in there.
I mean, what I would add is that while the war hasn't finished yet,
Mhm.
is the best time to come here and start doing things, because when the war will end, everyone will come here.
Yeah,
The flights
yeah.
will resume. People
Yeah.
will descend on Kyiv, and they'll start looking around on what to do. But by that time, the really serious people will be established already.
Correct. That's absolutely correct, and that's a very good point. So, well, thank you for that.
Thank you
for
so
coming.
much for inviting
And
me.
I would
It was a
like to
pleasure.
invite you another time, where
Oh.
with some new developments coming up, and
With pleasure.
Especially with your programs that you've got going on. We'd like to update on that.
Oh, for sure.
So, everybody, we want to thank you for joining us this evening for Finance and Investments. Again, Leon not only is a very good friend of mine, but I just really respect and admire his skills and and everything that he brings to the table. It's like you want to do business, you want to do investments, you always just pick the people that are smarter than you. And it's just a good cushion, and it's a good safeguard for yourself, and don't think that you need to do it all yourself. That's where you get in trouble. But when you bring the right people around you, you bring some good strategy, and you bring some good safeguards, and good opportunities will come to you as well. So anyway, have a good evening. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I don't have my guest yet, so we'll see what happens between now and then. So it'll be a nice surprise, but it's been really nice getting back on the program after a break and doing something on a regular basis. So have a good evening, and Slava Ukraina.
And happy 4th of July.
Yes, and happy 4th of July tomorrow. So,
That's right.
all right, good night.
Thank you. Have a good night.